How foods used to look. You take a trip through a supermarket and you see a bunch of food stuff on display. Corn, potatoes, they all look so familiar, but I can assure you that they looked nothing like that in the past, and we owe it all both to our ancestors and genetic remodeling. To some extent, genetic remodeling has sparked some controversy between individuals, but it's something that's been going on for century upon century, millennia even. Here are some foods the way they look today, and a view of how they looked in the past. Number 1. Corn. Corn is everywhere. In popcorns, chips, cereals, it forms the basis of almost all of our snacks. But it doesn't mean we have the slightest clue where it came from, and the scientific history has been a long-running mystery ever since. Experts have continually linked maize to teosinte, a Mexican grass which has skinny ears with just a few kernels inside a hard casing. Research conducted found that teosinte is a closer relative of rice than corn, until a student from Cornell University, the irony, not only found that teosinte and corn had identical chromosomes, he was able to get the seeds to pop, much like corn does. Number 2. Watermelon. Another popular fruit and a favorite of many, watermelon has been in existence for millennia due to the fact that archaeologists found some seeds at a 5,000-year-old Libya settlement. Paintings of watermelon and also the seeds have been found in Egyptian tombs, including that of King Tut. The watermelon of the past was certainly not like the ones today at all. In the past, watermelon were not as reddish as in present day. In fact, they were much paler and had more large seeds with less flesh. Number 3. Bananas. Everyone loves bananas. As a whole, in smoothies, their flavors, in ice creams, there's pretty much nothing we can do without them. But taking a look into their past, you'd find out that there's an entire history about them that we don't know about. An analysis from genetics, linguistics, and archaeology was able to determine the history behind these wonderful fruits. They were able to find out that these fruits were much more filled with seeds. In fact, wild bananas of today are still filled with seeds. The seedless bananas we eat are obviously genetically modified. Number 4. Carrots. These orange-colored vegetables are beloved by rabbits, horses, and some people too, as they go well when eaten plain, processed, and in salad. But a reverse in time finds them looking shockingly nothing like the way they do now. Scientists and also historians believe that carrots were grown and bred by Greeks and Romans, and instead of them being the conventional orange color, they were surprisingly purple and appeared longer with forked set of roots too. Number 5. Apples. Maybe unlike the rest, apples appeared quite similar to their ancestors. But the difference was the taste, and it has obviously evolved since then over the years. According to research from Global Trees Campaign, Malus sieversil was a wild apple that was native to the mountains of Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, Uzbekistan, Tajikistan, and China. Research also called this the Asian wild apple and is the main ancestor of our everyday apple. They were characteristically small and had a sour taste. Number 6. Tomatoes. Almost everybody loves tomatoes, but people were not too keen on taking a bite out of these in the before time. The early forms of this plant had characteristic small greenish or yellowish fruit. It was used for cooking by the Aztecs, and then later some explorers brought the tomato back to Italy and Spain. Even though now it's normal in those countries, Smithsonian says the 16th century tomatoes were actually feared and nicknamed poison apple because of a lot of people thinking that top aristocrats died after they ate them. But investigations revealed that the acidity tomatoes produced seemingly leached lead from the fancy plates they were used to serve them on. This caused lead poisoning. Number 7. Eggplants. We know them now for their characteristic purplish color, but the eggplant has had different colors in the past, including white, yellow, and azure. It was named the eggplant because it looked like an egg since it used to look white and round, much like an egg does. These fruits were used to perform both food and medicinal purposes. Number 8. Peach. Peaches usually looked small, like cherries, and had little flesh too. They were domesticated by the Chinese and used to taste slightly salty until they were genetically modified to taste juicier and to be much larger in size. 64 times larger, to be exact. Number 9. Marshmallows. Marshmallows might seem like something that was made in the modern world, but it's surprisingly very old and quite medicinal too. They were actually plants that the ancient Greeks used to produce lotions, balms, and potions for both commercial and personal use, from as old as 9 BC. It was usually used in almost every health issue, from an anti-inflammatory to a laxative. The Egyptians eventually figured out they could make it into candy, and though they didn't look like soft pillows of flavory goodness, it was a mixture of marshmallow sap, honey, and nuts, which really doesn't seem so bad. Number 10. Pies. Pies too? Yeah, I'm surprised too, but it turns out that today's pies are much better than the pies from the past. While today's pies are made to be sweet, the past pies were actually made to be savory. The crusts weren't even edible, as they were more intended to be a serving means than the actual food itself. They were called coffins and were sort of like baking dishes. When served, you would eat what was around it, and the pies were actually used more for entertainment than for eating in those days, as live birds and frogs were put in them and released to the pleasure of guests at the table. They did have sweet pies in those days, but they lacked sugar and were called tarts until the British established sugar plantation in the 18th century that they turned into the pies we know and love today. Number 11. Wedding cakes. Wedding cakes of nowadays always look more fancy and to celebrate that once-in-a-lifetime special day. But did you know they didn't always look as fancy as they do now in the before time? In fact, it didn't look fancy at all. They were usually made from wheat and barley and were more related to scones than cakes. Cakes weren't usually cut like it is today. Instead, it was broken over the bride as a means of bestowing good luck. Then the couple would have a bite and the guests would gather up the crumbs for good luck too. Gradually, the tradition shifted and cakes started becoming sweeter and sweeter. In the Middle Ages, cakes had changed massively but were nothing like the cakes nowadays. English wedding cakes were a tower of buns, and if the couple could kiss over it, it was a sign that the marriage would be prosperous. Number 12. Curry. Curry is a delicious spice that if you don't eat regularly, you should consider doing so. Today, it's usually a product of chicken and beef, and even tastes much better thanks to tomatoes, cream, and yogurt. But they weren't at all like that before. Since it's actually a spice, one would think that it would be difficult to get the details about its past. But science, as usual, is one step forward. Scientists were able to analyze it by taking 4,000-year-old pots and pans and comparing the starch molecules found in them to the starch found in various foods. Among the things that were found in the recipe for what is essentially the first curry, or at least the first one we've heard so far, there were only 4 ingredients: eggplant, turmeric, ginger, and salt. And while that's a far cry from today's curry, at least you can still make it. Here's the neat thing. They also found traces of plenty of other foods available at the same time as the first eggplant curry, and suggest making your own proto-curry by adding cumin, sesame oil, and a bit of diced mango. So there you have it. It's a comprehensive list of a few foods, fruits, and vegetables that used to look a lot different in the past than they do now. Let's face it, genetic remodeling has done a lot of good by improving the taste and improving the nutrition as well. So if anyone says you shouldn't be eating genetically modified foods, tell them you already are. That's all for now. I hope you enjoyed this video. Please like, comment, subscribe, and hit that notification icon to get our fresh content delivered to you. We hope to see you in our next video. Until then, be safe, keep exploring, and we'll see you around. Bye-bye.